One of the biggest news stories surrounding Leeds United at the moment is the potential move to sign Mudryk from Chelsea on loan. Now, this is a sort of fairly divisive one where very clearly a few people very much want this move to get done, others have a far more reserved view, and I think it's fair to look at the arguments on both sides of the conversation, but personally I think it would be a very, very big risk, and I don't think it's one that I'd want to take. But in this video, I'm going to talk about the sort of potential that he had, a few of the reasons that it is a risky move, and eventually come to a little bit of a conclusion as to whether or not Leeds United making a move for Mudryk would be beneficial for the club or very much work against us. And to start with, we do need to accept that he is a player that had potential. He moved to Chelsea for, I think, 80-something million pounds, 100 million euros, which is very clearly not something that comes out of nowhere. He was previously playing for Shakhtar Donetsk, who are a very, very decent side. He was performing very well for them, and whilst his end product relatively struggled, that's going to happen sometimes, and I will be completely honest with you, that end product didn't necessarily improve when he moved to Chelsea either. I got together a collection of various reviews of Mudryk from the time, because a lot of people in the past day or so have been looking at the fact that Leeds United are interested in doing a move and going, oh, this is a guy with a hell of a lot of potential. So I thought, okay, let's take an actual look at this and get an idea of what people were actually saying about the way he was performing at the time. So I looked at some tweets from the time that he signed for Chelsea to the time that he was banned. Not many of them were positive. These are a selection of the top tweets from the time, and generally not great. It's one at the top left. I don't think it's fair to judge Mudryk off the basis of 6 months, implying that those first 6 months were really, really bad for him. Paddy Power tweeting, harsh on Havertz and Mudryk, they're trying their best, when Chelsea tweeted that two idiots have stopped play by running on the pitch. Who scored, saying that his characteristics, he's strong in an aerial duel, but he's bad at finishing, crossing, holding onto the ball, discipline. Tim Sherwood saying that Arsenal did quite well to not sign him, having a 0% shot conversion rate in the Premier League for the first stint of time there. Ashwin Rahman, who's a fairly reasonably renowned football analyst, saying that he never watched Mudryk at Shakhtar Donetsk, but how did everyone misjudge him so much and think that he was so good when it might have just been pace and athleticism that stood him apart from everyone else. Pochettino, 10 months after signing him, saying we need to have a little bit of patience with him after he scored his first goal at the club. Taking 10 months to do that is not great. And then Maresca saying that he wasn't particularly happy with Mudryk in a match in 2024. I wasn't happy with his performance. He worked hard off the ball, but I expect more quality from him. He had good moments, but I really wanted to make a change and give Neto some minutes. That one's behind my head by the looks of it. Ultimately, it is not really screaming a significant amount of quality from Mudryk, which is not great. But then again, you look at the player and you think he was a player that had a lot of potential. Maybe he just hadn't reached it yet. But the issue is, to reach that potential, he would have needed to play a bit of football. And that's where the doping ban kicks in, because he was found to have a little bit too much of a banned substance in his bloodstream. Now, important to note that 18 months later, it was noted that with a set of new regulations that came out, the test that had been done would have been found to have passed. He wasn't sort of running a shitload of steroids or anything along those lines. It wasn't actually performance-enhancing stuff. He just had a little bit too much of a substance in his bloodstream, which would now be considered legal. Therefore, the ban was taken away. However, regardless of whether or not he did so deliberately, he still hasn't played competitive football in 20 months, which means that in terms of reaching that potential, and that sort of Enzo Maresca quote about he worked hard off the ball but his quality wasn't there, that was from 4 months before his ban. So in that time, in the 24 months after that, he's had 4 months of football to get to that potential, which he clearly hasn't, and he'll have a significant amount of sort of ring rust, having not played for 20 months. And a lot of people pointed out, well, he was staying fit, he will have trained on his own. Sure, but that's not playing games of football. I can go on a run every single day and I can have a couple of shots against an empty net. He's not been allowed to train with teams, with an organised football club, for over a year and a half. He is not going to be at the level that he needs. But let's put that aside. Let's put aside the fact that his performances weren't great and he's not a chance to build into his potential. there's also another issue with him on a personal level before we get to any sort of deal with Chelsea, and that is the fact that we do have this no dickhead rule at the club, and that is one that is fair enough. Occasionally we might sign a bit of a knob, but looking through what's gone on with Mudryk being banned in other senses, including from competitive online games, including Counter-Strike, a lot of people will have a look at what I'm about to say and go, oh, it doesn't really mean anything. I think this is a fairly significant thing that we might want to pay attention to. At one point, he was losing a game of Counter-Strike and people were mocking him for the fact that he was banned for doping, which, okay, fine. Have a shot back. Insult their mums. I don't know. Instead, Mudryk's choice was to have a little bit of a chat back about the Volhynia massacre, which, if you don't know about it, which I didn't before I started looking into this, was a massacre that took place during World War II, committed by the Ukrainian insurgent army against the Polish population that were sort of resident. As many as 133,000 Polish people were killed, and Mihailo Mudryk found this to be suitable to use just as an insult to someone who insulted him in a video game. It feels like that might be a breach of the no dickhead rule, and it isn't really something that I want to see from a player that is at Leeds United. It's not brilliant, to be completely honest with you, especially when it is clearly part of a wider historical context that we don't really like to make fun of, like, as a thing. It's not brilliant. But even if you are someone that wants to put that aside, then you get to the point of, okay, how about making a deal with Chelsea? Well, Chelsea are of the opinion that guaranteeing him minutes is something that absolutely needs to happen for a move to take place. Sure, he'd get more minutes than he has for the last 20 months, but if Leeds genuinely want to take on a player that hasn't played football in over a year and a half and guarantee him minutes in the first team and sort of consistently playing football, I don't personally understand how that's going to make any sense at all. Because based on past experience, he wouldn't get in based on his personal level of quality. Maybe, if he was at his potential, he would walk into the side. Fine. But he isn't at his potential. He wasn't at his potential. And we have no reason to believe that he could be at his potential and keep Noah Okafor out of the side, who, when he has played for us in competitive games of football, has been excellent. But we have no reason to believe that Mudryk would be good enough to hold him out of the side. And if we're at the point where he needs to play 20 matches this season and Okafor's kept him out for the first 18, at that point you need to play Mudryk every single game for the rest of the season because we've signed a daft contract with Chelsea. I think, to sum things up, personally, I don't think he's got the quality. I don't think he's got the experience because his last 20 months have been bad. I don't think he's got the personality to do it, considering the fact that he invoked a massacre when he was losing in a video game, and clearly it wasn't just a single mention because he was banned from said gaming platform for quite a long time. And you compare the fact that, like, we would even need to have very, very positive terms with Chelsea, which isn't always necessarily going to be the case because they very much like to be on the up in terms of players that they are letting leave the club. They're very good at making a profit and very good at making exits work in their favour. All of this adds up to say that it would be a very, very big risk to sign Mihailo Mudryk. And of course, there is potential that he is actually just a good dude and is completely misrepresented in terms of the Volhynia thing. There is a pretty decent chance that he might be better than we expect and he might perform to a very, very high standard and might have reached that potential in those training sessions. And sod it, there might be a chance that we get a damn good deal out of Chelsea. But if you combine all of those slim chances, it's an insanely big risk. There's maybe a 1 in 1,000 shot that all of those things line up and Leeds actually benefit from this move to a level that we would from signing a player that doesn't have all of this baggage attached. What I think has happened is a lot of fans have seen that Mudryk is on the market and is a player that has played at a top 6 side with a massive fee attached to him, and they've gone, That guy had potential, and now it's a few years later. And we've not realised that there's a lot of reasons he won't have reached that potential. And I understand that completely. I have been attached to causes that I look back on and go, that was never going to work. Melier, as an example. But I think this one is maybe not for me. And that is a fairly reserved way of putting it, but yeah. I will always back any player that is wearing a Leeds United shirt unless they do something genuinely not good whilst representing Leeds United and haven't shown any signs of learning the lesson, Kiko Casilla. But it's going to be interesting to see which way this one goes and which way the general public opinion does. But on the subject of public opinion, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm sure this is going to be a fun little comment section. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video and got at least some insight from it, and I will see you later. Toodaloo.